Okay, so drawing out a segmented bend. This is my second attempt. I just had a tantrum and a lot of screaming and carrying on because nothing was going right, so I had to start again. So here I've got a 4-segment bend. Where is my dimensions? Next sheet. So as you can see, segment number 1, then segment number 2, segment number 3, they are full segments, 22.5 degrees, and on each end we have a half segment. Half of 22.5 is 11.25 degrees. Excuse me. We've got 200 diameter bend with a 150mm throat. Mouse is jumping around. I might have another tantrum. And from the outside edge to the center line is 250mm. So the center line, this green line around here, is what we're actually going to do our joint line on. Go back to the front page. I need to put some numbering on. So where is my... the mouse is really playing up. I'm about due to really have a tantrum. Come on, smash it on the table. They tell me that works really well. So numbering, turn our numbering on. So on the end of the bend, I just want to stretch that out, that thing there out. There we go. On the end of the bend, we always draw a plan view. We only need a half. I've numbered it from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, with number 3 being on the joint line. So I've already started to, or already drawn 2 patterns out. This one through the center here, or through the center of this center line, is actually a pattern without a lap joint. So it's the development of that line out through here, and you would use that when it's got no lap joint to actually butt the segments together and weld them. This half pattern currently, as it sits, this half on the bottom here, which is between this point and this point here, that hasn't got a lap. But if you're going to make a bend like this top left hand corner one, this is 3 full segments, so there's 1, 2 and 3, and on the end here you've got 2 half segments which are 11.5 degrees. But because I've turned a lap out on this, all of them have got laps, and they've been jennied out on a jenny over here. So there's another one with a lap and it's been spot welded together. That's lap and spot. This one here has got a twist lock system, so you can actually change the angle of the bend. Going back over here. So that pattern currently down the bottom doesn't have a lap on it, but what I have done is I have drawn it with a lap below the baseline, that line there, which is the baseline across there. So what I've done is I've put a 10mm lap on it through the middle. You could add it to one side or the other side, but it's completely pointless. It's easier if you actually just start in the middle and put a 10mm offset and then actually draw your pattern out. So I use the baseline to go across the sheet, and then I simply added 10mm below it, and I've taken this line and I've mirror imaged it onto this side here. You can't do that when you're developing it out with a compass, or you can actually with a compass and scribe and a rule, but in this program I've simply mirror imaged it to the other side. So as I say, this pattern here doesn't have a joint line, simply for welding. This pattern here, if you want to do lap joints, you would put 10mm through the middle. Could be more, could be slightly less, but you would turn it out on a jenny, and that's how you develop it. Over here I've made up this chart. You can see down the outside, put the hand on, segments, 3 full segments, 4 full segments, 6 full segments and 8. If you look at it, it'll tell you a 3 full segment pattern. If you use the 2 half segments on the end without putting a full segment in between, it'll give you a 30-degree pattern. 1 full segment and 2 halves will give you 60 degrees. 2 full segments and 2 halves will give you 90 degrees. Most people generally do a 6 full segment pattern, or the maximum is 5 full segments and 2 halves, which will give you 90. But as you can see, it gives you patterns between 15, 30, 45, 60, 75 and 90 degree angles. So 6 pattern is actually, you know, the most versatile. 8, I probably wouldn't use that unless I was making something really large. Just don't see the point. A 6 is sufficient. Where am I with the mouse? So we're going to start to develop this out into this one here. The rollout length, it's 200 millimeters diameter. 200 millimeters times pi comes out at 628. Look at the long number. You don't need to use the long number. It's simply because I'm using the computer and I've stuck it in there. And my offsets for 12 equal divisions are 52.35. So you would roll it out at 628. And you use your offsets at about 52.4 if you could measure that accurately. Pretty hard to measure that accurately with a scribe and a rule, but that's really what it needs to be. So baseline, I'm going to extend this baseline across the sheet. What am I going to do it? I'm going to do it about 700. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to offset this line here. What have I done? I'm going to offset it 20 millimeters. So there's my start point, and I need to repeat the offset, bring that back onto the screen, and the offset needs to be 628 0.318. I've got 2 decimal points there, right down the bottom, 318.5307. Extending that across. And now I want to do the offsets for the 12 equal spacings, and that is 52.35987756. So I'm just going to lay these in, and I'll come back and talk about it if I remember. So I've got 12 equal spaces. What are those divisions? Well, they are the distance between 0 and 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and that's what I'm rolling out across the sheet. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have a tidy up here, going to get rid of that line there, and I'm going to get rid of that, and I really want to get rid of that. I'm not sure how we got that little line there, but anyway. So this is for the half pattern. Where these lines come up from the base. So line number 1, where it comes up and it hits the joint line, I take a point from this point here and I go directly across the sheet. And that's what I'm going to start to lay in now. So lines, there's my first one there, right there. Across the sheet, we'll go about 850. I'll tidy these up in a moment, you'll see what I'm doing. 850, projecting right across the sheet, across all those points. Another one, 850, point number 3, 850, point number 4, 850, point number 5. And lastly, number 6, where 6 is coming up from the bottom, 850. So there they are, they're all projected across the sheet. I'm just going to trim that out quickly. Twit. This is where I started to foul up before and had a tantrum. I'm going to turn my numbers on. I've actually already preloaded the numbers in green colour. So there's my numbers. So this first line, number 3, this is what I'm doing my joint line on. So I have to start my pattern on 3, and then I've got 3 in the middle, and I've 3 on the end. So you always have 3 of the joint line on it. And then as you can see, here's line number 0, this intersection down the bottom here. Sorry, that was line number 1. That's 0 there and 0. So they've got a point right down here. And 6 conversely up the top. and there's line 6, so there's the top point for 6 right up there. So we have to run a joint line in along there. Now this is what I mucked up before. So we start on the line 3, down to 2, down to 1. I need to zoom in a wee bit. Come back out, up to 2. I might have to pinch a joint line. I always seem to have trouble with, excuse me, running spline lines in. I must be useless. I can't quite get it right. See, it should stop there, and it should stay, and that's, see that flex on the line? It's not supposed to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to carry it past a little and stop there, and I'm going to put a tolerance on that and stop there. There we go. I cheated slightly. You're simply going to run your lines across there with a pencil. Put your joint line in with a pencil, and that's how you're going to lay your line in. So I've just cheated fractionally, but it's simply because I'm not quite getting it right with the computer. Clearly I'm not doing a good enough job. Let's get rid of all this dross across here that's not required, just to sort of highlight what's going on. Do it again. That one, and same out the other side. So there's our half pattern. What will I do? Well, I'll trim those out as well. Actually, I'll trim those off there now that we've done it. You can see where those lines came from before. Get rid of that one. So what I would do from there is simply offset it by 10mm to put a lap on it. There's my 10mm, and I'm going to mirror image it simply on the computer. I'm going to pinch that line. I haven't done a centre line, right, I need to do it. Another centre line, 5mm. There it is in the centre. Mirror image. And I'm pinching that line and I'm mirroring it from there down to there. I would simply take a line from that point and draw across the end there and across the other end. So that middle line was simply for me to mirror image the pattern. So there's your pattern with an actual joint line in it. That's how you would lay it out with a joint line. You can't actually do a joint line up through the centre here when you lay your pattern out, because it needs to step off. I had it 10mm, which means you'd have to step off 5mm either side of your centre line, which throws your projection lines up, coming up from these points here. So you can't actually do it. You actually need to step to the side of the pattern, like I have done here, and put another 10mm and then project your lines out through the other side. So that's what you would have to do. I'm just going to take this off here now I've shown what to do, and I'm going to zoom out slightly. So I'm going to shift that as well, get that down to there. So there's a half pattern with a lap that you saw me do. So this one coming up through here, I'll turn on a few more things on the screen. What are we on? Yellow projection lines. So what I've done, the red line going up through the middle is perpendicular to the end line, so there's a 90-degree angle in there. So that goes straight out through the centre, and what you can see is how I took my joint lines when I came across the sheet at this point from these individual points. I've drawn lines up through from those points which run parallel to the centre line. So you have to run them all up the sheet. There's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, all projected up the sheet, the distance that you need to get. So I'm going to do, I'm not going to run those lines off the other side. It's a bit awkward when it's on an angle to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mirror image those lines again. So we'll just copy all these in. And that one there, and I'm doing it from there. So there it goes. There's my line. Do it again, Mark. And selected objects up there to that point there, and now I need to push N for no. That's kept it. And okay, so once again, number 3 coming up from the bottom is our joint line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to run a spline in just to show you, but I'm actually going to copy it off the next drawing. So it's heading back towards the center on this end. Number 4, sorry, there's 4, there's 5, there's 6, 5, 4. No, it's not, Mark. Do it again. Number 3, number 4, wrong way. Number 3, number 2, number 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5. That's what I missed before. 4, and it's 3. So once again, I get that little flex on the line, and it's something I'm not doing right. That's how you would lay your line in with a pencil. You simply go through all those points. What I'm going to do, for some reason I'm mucking it up, I'm a bit ditzy, so I'm going to pinch the line off here because I'm pretty cunning. Clipboard, copy it with a base point. I'm going to use that as the base point. And I'm going to lay this line in here. For some reason, Control V. And what did I say? I was going from that point there. And it's slightly shorter. What? Oh no, there you go. You're wrong. You've got it in the wrong position. So, Control V. This point here is what I'm looking for. There you go. And we can do exactly the same with the line on the other side. Copy it with a base point, which is that center point again, back into the development. Control V. Yeah, I know. Control V. Using the center point again. There is our pattern. So what I'm going to do is just trim it out for clarity on both sides. It'll take a minute, hopefully. Picking up that line, that little point. Yep, there we go. So this is a pattern, as I say, for a lobster back bend that you're going to weld together. It's got no lap attached to it, and it's actually how you draw it out. Out through the center there. What will I do? I'll put that line and that line there on the joint, on the outline. There we go. And what am I going to do? Pan it. How are we going for time? 19 minutes. Right, so there is a lap with a joint line. Have I got my numbers on this page? Numbering, okay. For some reason, I'm going to go back to numbering system for this one and pinch these numbers off here. Scroll in a wee bit. Mouse is jumping around again. Four and 3. Copy those with a base point. Come back into my development. And Let's Control V. What are you doing, you dipstick? I didn't push the correct key. I don't think I picked the base point, did I? 1, 0, 1, 2, and 3. Copy with a base point. Right on the very end for the base point into our development. Just scroll in a wee bit here. Control V. And that's it right there. So there's the numbers. 3 down to 0, 0 up to 6, 6 back down to 3 to lay the pattern in. So that's how you would develop your pattern. I'm going to take these lines out here on the end again. Just trying to reduce some of the lines in here because there's quite a few. So that's joining it with the join dead on the center line. Now some of you might want to make your lobster back beans with the joints on the throat. Sorry, the throat. Or conversely on the heel. So I've done those developments just to show you. Turn those two on. So if you're developing it with the joint line on the throat, instead of starting with 3 as your number, sorry, I'm just going to go into, no, I'm not. Instead of starting with your joint on number 3, you're actually starting with your joint line on 0, so it goes from 0 to 6 in the middle and back out to 0 on the other end. Conversely, if you want to start with your joint on the longest line, it starts with 6 in terms of the numbering. So it starts at 6 on the end, goes to 0 in the middle, and back out to 6. So that's how you would develop your patterns for that. So there's the 3 different methods. One for the joint line on the heel, one for the joint line with the information starting from the throat, and this one, which is the most common one, with the joint line on this line up around through the center here. And that's how that's developed out. And almost lastly, layout. So when you come to lay your patterns out, this portion down the bottom here between this line and this line is a half segment, but it hasn't got a lap on it. You can see that I haven't got 10 mil below the baseline. If you come up to this end, you can see that I have got that 10 mil offset in that portion there. So I start off with a half segment on this end here that has no lap. I then have one that has got a lap in this zone here, then another full pattern in this zone here with a lap, another full pattern in this zone with a lap, and then a half pattern without a lap. So you've got to have your 4 laps for your four joints, but one of them will not have a lap on the other end of it. And that's what I had these notches on this pattern here for. This little notch here with this straight line at this point here and at this point on this end is so that when you lay your sheet out up the sheet, you've got these straight lines as reference points to lay your pattern out, especially if you use a half pattern, or if you use a whole pattern, you need to put your offsets in on your full pattern. So I think that I pretty much covered it there. We don't need to look at that. Just to the side of this, I've actually got my in hidden detail. We'll zoom out. For some reason, oh, okay. Yep. So there's a full pattern, which I've simply put into this area here. There's my half pattern with a lap, which is up the top there, and this one is a half pattern without a lap. So you can see the cut sizes, 643.32. All of this whole bend here takes up 437 millimeters. The distance between this point and this point here, you can add whatever straight on you want down here, and the same on the other end. You can add more and more straight on it. But if you were making multiple bends, let's say you had to make 5, you'd work out what your cut size was, 437 times 5, and then you would just lay them off in multiples up the sheet as you lay it out. It's quite simple in that regard, not much to it. What else can I show you? I don't think I can show you anything else. There's the 3 different methods of laying out your patterns from that dimension drawing. This information here on the left-hand side, I'm going to do another pattern development, which I will simply calculate out using this chart. Once you can simply calculate it, you don't have to do any drawing. If you use these figures in this chart that I've written up here, and I'll do it in another video, so look out for it if you want to learn it. You simply don't have to do anything. You never ever have to draw out a pattern graphically, unless that's the only way you know how to do it. But if you wanted to learn how to do it mathematically, watch my other video, and that will be posted in the next few weeks if I can get my act together, and we'll go from there. So save on that, and that's it. So thank you. It's all yours.